going in there today and looking at all the, whew.
Wow, that really hit her. What's going on, loungers? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Mason T and I am an importer and product developer. So week in and week out, I constantly use this intro because I'd like for people to understand that there are many levels when it comes to the e-commerce space and not what people think when it comes to reselling. Words are very important. When we change words, we can even change laws. That's how crazy it could get. So the words that we use are very important not to derail us from our understanding of what something is. So what I mean by this is the word reselling itself is just too big of an umbrella term sometimes, and it gets people confused. Because when you think about what wholesaling is, well, let's say if you go to a wholesaler and then you pick up a bunch of branded goods and stuff like that, aren't you essentially selling something that somebody else made and therefore you are reselling it? When you go to thrifted items or discount stores and stuff like that, it doesn't matter what it is. You are selling something that already exists in the market. So you are reselling the item. Arguably, even when I do some white labeling and I am just buying what existing merchandise is from a factory, am I not just reselling what the factory is doing? So essentially, when you think of it like that, then, you know, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Stay in your lane, I'll do mine. You see what I'm saying? It starts to conflate the conversation of what's going on. Instead, we need to label things properly, right? And when we do that, we don't derail from our understanding of things. So what is reselling, eBay reselling, Depop, Poshmark, like all that stuff? Essentially, you are just flipping stuff, okay? And flipping stuff in its most basic form is the level 1 entry point of dealing in e-commerce or tangible goods online. So when you think about flipping, and eventually how to scale this, right? That is exactly where my gripe comes in. Most of these eBay gurus out there, all right, they will tell you a lot of things about scaling when it comes to doing flipping, but they are romanticizing what reselling actually is, because there's actually no scaling when it comes to flipping stuff, right? And if you choose to scale it, then you're going to be putting in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, because ultimately, let's talk about flipping first, right? When you think about what flipping is, you're supposed to take an item, flip it, and then flip it, and then flip it, right? And what does that mean? It's supposed to get bigger. It's supposed to snowball. But what's snowballing is not, you know, the money to your business, like all that other stuff, okay? Because when you're going to scale what flipping is, for any business model, right? Either we're going to scale the value or we're going to scale the volume. And usually the knee-jerk reaction is to scale the volume, right? Because it's very hard to control market trends and set prices and stuff like that. So essentially, if you're selling one water bottle, you want to sell like 2, and then 4, and then 8, 16, 32, 64, right? So on and so forth. But once you start getting to, I don't know, 128, right? 256, 512, it gets a lot. And you are physically tied to every single thing that you flip when you are flipping stuff, because you are doing one-off sales, right? So you create listings for one-time sales, you source things for one-time sales, and then you go out and then you pick everything by hand, right? And you judge all of them on a case-by-case basis. This one's good, I'm gonna get this, I'm not gonna get that, I'm gonna get this one, I'm not gonna get that. So ultimately, I also have to photograph and list everything, as well as package and ship everything. I am physically tied to all of these transactions, okay? So how do we scale properly when it comes to flipping? You're supposed to increase the value. So you're supposed to go from low ticket items to higher ticket items. So essentially, go ahead, you know, start with your shoes, hats, jeans, caps, whatever. And then we would move on to what? Maybe some luxury items such as watches or handbags and stuff like that. And then we would save up some money so that we could flip even higher ticket items. Eventually we would get to cars, and possibly we get to homes. So people who are doing house flipping is at pretty much the top of the food chain when it comes to being a flipper. The thing is that when you think about it, the quantity of our items actually starts to dwindle and diminish the more that we're climbing up to the top as a flipper, isn't it? Because essentially you used to do 10 shoes, 20 shoes, 50 shoes and stuff like that. And now I do 20, 30 handbags. And then I'm down to 4 or 5 cars. And now I do 1 or 2 houses. The quantity starts to diminish. So many times when these eBay gurus tell you like, we could sell a yacht for $1 million, like, yeah, you absolutely could sell a yacht for $1 million, but you have to slowly flip your way to get there, right? So that I'm doing these items, I'm doing those items. And while I'm doing that, I am learning the expertise for the next stage of flipping something upwards. So how do we do volume then? And that is exactly what today's video is about. So I have been given specifically, this recommendation to talk about Back from Burnout, okay? I think Back from Burnout, Mel is an awesome lady. I think she's very wholesome. I love everything that she has to say. She's very honest about stuff, okay? So this is never somebody that I would go after or expose as a grifter or whatever. But the thing is that like, I was really, really concerned with her story and I wanted to share it with you guys because once you hear what she has to say, I want to explain exactly what burnout is and what the solution for that is. So let's have a listen, guys.
Crying with Mel. Okay, okay, look guys, I'm not gonna lie, I've been feeling a little bit flat for a few weeks now. It's Thursday, I haven't gone to the warehouse. Honestly, I just couldn't face going in there today and looking at all the, This is
wow, that really hit her.
A crying video. It's meant to be a hangout video. Right. I honestly, I couldn't face going into the warehouse today.
Imagine having that kind of an emotional reaction just by looking at your warehouse. Ooh.
I don't know if you remember, if you're a long-time viewer here, after I went to America, I met up with Tech and Sports, who's my mentor. And I did a video with Tech and Sports. And I'll link it down below, actually, in the description. And basically, I'd got myself into a rut with the business and I was consumed by a whole lot of unlisted inventory and it was overwhelming me. And that's what happens to me when I have an overwhelming amount of stuff in my surrounding. I don't like lots of stuff. You can see around me, I don't have a huge amount of stuff. I prefer to live a more minimalist kind of lifestyle. And I work better and I thrive in a better environment when everything's clean. Sure. And when I went to America, my warehouse was in a state and there was stuff everywhere and I just was feeling very overwhelmed. And I did an interview with Tech and Sports, my mentor. And Tech and Sports basically described to me that what was going on in my eBay store was that I had a virus. Work on what's there and getting through it. And maybe not quite list what I actually need to for a few weeks while I get through it. And then I can come out and go hard. Or is that wrong?
Well, you see how the problem of receiving too much stock that you don't know about has spread like a virus through your business.
Yeah. And it's time consuming and I don't have the time.
Right. It spread like a virus because now we need to cull it. We have piles in the corner that we need to make decisions on. And instead of spending time making money, which making money is photograph and listing.
Yep.
Now we're spending time on tasks that don't make us money.
Yep.
And if we can minimize that and maximize photo and listing, that's when we start to have more successful businesses. So there is nothing more profitable to a reseller than sitting their butt in the chair with their fingers on the keyboard listing items.
Mm. And I had to get rid of the virus. And the only way to get rid of the virus was I had to do the punishment, basically. I had to do the work and I had to get rid of that virus by clearing up all the unlisted piles and listing the unlisted inventory. And I did that. And it took me 3 months to get through that. I worked solidly every single day doing the punishment. I didn't go out buying anything. I just worked my way through what was in the warehouse until I got to the point where I had a spotless clean warehouse and I was in the middle of the day. After I'd done my listing for the day, I was pretty much sitting there twiddling my thumbs thinking, what do I have to do in my business now? Like, everything's done. I'm not reorganizing. I'm not sorting. I'm not moving boxes and piles from here to there, and everything was done. And after I did that, I had this overwhelming feeling of calm. So I'd gone from an overwhelming feeling of stress and anxiety to like an overwhelming feeling of calm. And I vowed that I would never get into that position again. And look at me now. Okay, so last year I bought 22 cages of books from Tom.
I feel as if when she said, "Look at me now," it's not going to end up well. Because originally she was explained that, like, so I got the pep talk from tech, and then I went back and then I did it and I cleared it. And, the feeling of catharsis from the feeling of dread is, wonderful feeling, right? And she said that she vowed that she would never let this happen again. But now I think she's talking about her supplier.
And in each cage there would be at least probably approximately 1,000 books. And 22 cages, you do the maths, 22,000 books. There's over 20,000 books within this hall. And I'm very grateful for the cages and what the experiences that they've given me. They're going to be extremely profitable. I bought these cages for very, very cheap. And the profit is going to be huge within these cages. But the amount of work and the feeling of just being consumed by these books is now starting to get me down again. So after I moved warehouse in November, I took all of December off. I pretty much was at burnout stage. I was absolutely broken. Took the month off listing and doing eBay and just kind of potted around and made my videos and stuff. And I needed that break. I came back on the 1st of January, but to be honest, I would have liked a little bit more time off. I chose the 1st of January because it just worked. It worked for doing like a quarter. It just worked for coming back and starting a fresh slate, I think, on the 1st of January. So although I would have liked to have a little bit of extra time off, and I still felt like I probably needed a little bit of extra time off the eBay, I am kind of glad that I started it back when I did. But I made a video the other week where I talked about how I've always just created my own job in my life. For the last 24 years, I've created my own jobs. Whatever my life circumstance has been at the time, over my period while I had 4 children, I just created my own jobs, changed them up roughly every 5 years and started like something different. I tend to get like a bit of an itch around the 5-year mark. Now, I've been reselling for 8 years and I've been doing YouTube for 6 years. I love YouTube. I love making videos. I love talking to you. I love inspiring other people. I love helping other people. That's something that I thrive off. Like, I love help. I want to help everyone. I don't necessarily love eBay. Whether or not I still like eBay, I don't know if I love eBay. I
get what she means.
I definitely don't love it at the moment.
Of course.
I feel like I'm back in this punishment mode and I'm doing the punishment and I'm living my life on like a Groundhog Day. And I'm not feeling like I've got the opportunity to really get out of the warehouse or do anything exciting or change things up. And in reality, I'm creating a job for myself because I want to design a life that you love, or whatever that little saying is, design a life you love. And so the whole sole purpose of me working for my own is so that I create my own rules, I create my own lifestyle, I do things that I want to do, and I get to run my own race, I guess. I don't like working for the man. It doesn't work for me. My ADHD brain doesn't like it. I like doing things on my own. So at the moment, though, I feel like I'm a slave to eBay and I feel like I work for eBay. And now I feel like I'm going to a job where I just work for eBay and a slave to eBay, but I don't necessarily feel like I get rewarded from eBay, if that makes sense. Like, it's like I feel like I'm more being constantly punished, and then I have to like do more to try and please the eBay system. And it's like I'm like trying to be a people pleaser. And it's like I've got an employee that I'm like busting my ass off to try and please, while at the same time, it's making me a little bit miserable.
Oh, that is awful. What's happening? Okay, guys, if you're listening along to this with me, so essentially, this is what I mean, right? This is my biggest criticism of what tech and sports is, right? It's mostly motivational fluff. Sure, okay. Does tech know anything about eBay and just doing eBay and stuff like that? I would say yes. Absolutely yes. Okay. He would be a very good tutor to help anybody to start off in eBay. And I'm sure there are people who learn from him and is very grateful for that. Okay. But to go beyond just, tutoring on how to do eBay, because what Mel is at right now is very above and beyond. Okay. I think personally, she has graduated from tech and sports long ago. All right. And the whole mind virus thing or whatever is just, a good pep talk. So it energized her, and brought her back from burnout. You see what I'm saying? If anything, if Mel is constantly coming back from burnout, then when you think of glass half full and the glass half empty, then you are just as much back to burnout. You see what I'm saying? So there's a big problem here. Why does it keep on happening? It's because the input and the output doesn't align. If you're doing a regular job, let's come back up to the top, guys. If you're doing a regular job, that is a one-to-one output, right? I agreed that if I work X amount of hours, I am paid for an hourly rate. So if you pay me $10 an hour and I work for 8 hours, I get $80, right? And if I work more, I'll probably get overtime. And then, so 11 hours, I get 3 hours overtime, et cetera, et cetera. But again, I can't get that overtime if I don't do the initial 8 hours first, right? So no matter what is happening, my time and my effort that I put in and my output is going to come out one-to-one, right? But the benefit and the trade-off to that is that there's more job security, there's benefits and stuff like that. And how you would scale from the job model is that you would get promotions and raises and stuff, right? You would start off as a, lowly intern as a doctor and then become a resident until you're chief of medicine or something like that. And then you make more, but that's how you would scale like that, right? Now, when you think about how a typical business scales, then you put in a certain amount of work, but the work that you put in is always growing the business, is always helping to grow the business, right? When you do a regular job, like you're flipping burgers and stuff like that, you're not really helping the corporation grow, right? It's other factors that are there. You're just there to help it maintain and operate every single day. So when you think about exactly how a normal business is supposed to be, the work that you put in builds towards a foundation so that today, maybe I only get no return whatsoever. It's really bad. And then I get half return. Then it starts paying me 1x, 2x, 3x, 4x, and it starts going up and up. That growth, that process is going to prevent the burnout because I am seeing my efforts being rewarded, especially if I keep on refining the system so that I don't have to work as much anymore and I'm still seeing the same kind of returns. When you're doing flipping, eBay reselling specifically, then it is a diminishing return because number one, nobody sources at 100%. So if you bring 10 items home, you bring 100 items home, right? And then you do all those things and then you sell all those things. Even if you got to sell all of it, in order for you to make more, you have to do more. And that's what she specifically says. I feel like I just have to keep doing more in order to maintain that sales. And she has hit her physical cap on this thing. Kudos to Mel, honestly, because I've seen her warehouse in her thumbnails and stuff and how many books that she does. And she just said 22,000 books or whatever, essentially because of all of her other stories and of her telling her story. I believe, what she's saying because I don't think she was lying about anything else. So she hasn't given me any reason to doubt her, But essentially what I want to say is that she has gone from whatever she was in the beginning to where she is now 100% on elbow grease. That sucks. If we're being honest, you know what I mean? Okay. At some point we have to start, pivoting to more creative strategy. Okay. So I personally don't really sell books. So I would have to, if I were to help her, I'd have to sit down and have a one-on-one conversation and ask her, okay, tell me a little bit about how you sell books and stuff so that I could think about how you could streamline or you could pass this off. streamlining is a very interesting concept that I see that a lot of these eBay gurus like to, talk about as they romanticize what eBay reselling is to you guys, right? Because streamlining, okay, let me give you this really cute example. If you walk from point A to point B versus you run from point A to point B, are you streamlining? And the answer is no. You are swapping one resource for another, because in order for you to run, it requires more energy to do that. Sure, so now I'm trading the time for energy, but still the distance covered is still me, like physically having to cover the same distance. So when they tell you, hey, you got to find ways to list faster, photo faster and stuff, you're not reducing any of the actual friction touch points of the business. So what does that mean? You're not actually streamlining. He's just telling you when you clean the tables and stuff, don't walk, run. That doesn't help. We have to do something where we could eliminate these touch points so that we're not doing the same amount of work anymore, but we're still getting the same amount of outcome. This is what I'm talking about. The input and the output doesn't feel rewarding enough for you to get that rewarding dopamine hit. So I don't feel like it's, I'm being burnt out on this. Also, the strategy that you put in every day has to compound constantly towards the business. So let me explain exactly without using any crazy analogies and stuff, right? So let's say I want to start a new product and start a business. What do I do first? I spend hours researching and studying and building up my background of understanding exactly what the product is and what niche that I'm trying to do. Eventually, I start to contact sourcing agents and talk to them what my idea is. And then he connects me with different kind of factories and stuff. And then we start to convey exactly what my product is, what my idea is. We negotiate the price. All the while, I am saving up money from my day job or whatever so that I could buy my first batch of goods. Every day, I save a little money into my company. Every day, I do some more research and studying and stuff. This is all towards the foundation of my business, right? So once I have that decent foundation to the point where finally my first batch of goods is here, time to pipeline it into an e-commerce platform so that it starts selling. Now I have to start nurturing the listing. So I put up a listing and then the next day I come back and I try to refine the listing. And then I refine it, right? Then I hire people to try to, beef up the photos for me so that we go from very clean photos to hero photos, lifestyle photos, infographic photos. It gets better and better as we go along. I monitor exactly what the sponsored ad is. I want to see if the organic traffic versus the promoted traffic is, if there's any shift in those things. And as the item starts selling better, we went from 1 or 2 today to 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. It gets more and more. I'm starting to see the fruits of my results. But you could see that what happens is that in a normal business, it's a lot like playing an RPG game, right? I save where I am, and then tomorrow I play more, so I keep progressing in the story. I don't just start off all the way from the beginning like we're playing, original Super Mario. If you hit the power and it resets, then we're just starting off in world 1 again. You see what I'm saying? And that's what happens in reselling, right? And just flipping items, because you just went to do a whole bunch of individual items. You didn't baby and nurture one item, one concept, and then have a big quantity of it so that we could start building the sales velocity within the listing. A lot of these gurus like to talk about sales velocity, but they're talking about how many sales and how fast you move stuff because of how many things you brought in for the whole store. That's not really that important. What you should be doing is taking your one item, suppose whatever you sourced, right? One good item. And now once I've established that pipeline between the supplier all the way to my sales channel so that it starts to flow, now it's flowing more and more. We want to increase the bandwidth, right? We're doing 5 or 6 a day. We're doing 7 or 8 a day. Now it's moving 10. Now it's moving 20. Now it's moving 35 every single day. While this is happening, what am I doing? I am developing my next product and my next product and my next product. For every product that I develop, I have success retention. And so where's the burnout in my case? There's no burnout because of all the success retention and the products that I developed over time that's constantly generating funds for the company to be the backbone of my business. I have the funds to take care of other things. So when fires happen, I have the money to go put them out. So one of the fires that keeps on happening in her business is that, look, I have to get a whole bunch of stuff and then 20,000 books come in and then I have to do all the books and stuff, right? So if the payoff, the output is exponential, is magnified by the input that you put in, you'll have the money in order to handle this stuff. We will come up with a solution for it. But at the moment, you have to pivot over to a more creative strategy in order to do stuff. You know, a lot of people talk about the idea of like get rich quick schemes and shortcuts and stuff like that. Let me explain that for you guys. You know, there are two things, right? There are real strategies, tried and true methods that every business owner does because they're pretty much common sense. They're common sense only after I explain it to you. And the difference between a good mentor is that they are able to organize all the information so that it's more digestible to you. That's the purpose of having one-on-one mentorship, right? And that's where the shortcut comes in, because it's a shortcut in life. I didn't know, now I know. The grift is when people lie to you about stuff, right? Like they romanticize what reselling is. And rather than to tell you the honest truth that if you're going to be flipping stuff, you should flip from lower value to higher value in order to scale that. But if you ever wanted to increase the volume, now we have to change up the strategy. This way, we start doing one listing and selling many items rather than doing a whole bunch of listings, selling them one item each. Anyways, guys, that is the video. If you enjoy that, please give it a like. And if you learned something, please consider subscribing. As always, I'll see you guys in the next. Take care.